Hey guys, how's it going? It's Al. Week 11 is a couple of days away for kickoff, and I've got a lineup builder show. I'm going to take questions from my Twitch chat, just like we do every week, for about 45 minutes to an hour. We're going to go over everything that there is to go over on this slate. They're going to ask me questions about what they want to know from different positions, price ranges, strategy, bankroll management, whatever questions that they have for me possibly, and I'm going to try to do my best to answer those questions. We're going to get after it. I'm going to give you my opinions from the research that I've done throughout this week, and do my best to basically just tell you what I think about this slate. My answers are never going to be 100% correct. Nobody is 100% right at predicting the future, and that's what we're trying to do in this business. I'm trying to let the facts guide my way. I don't have these predisposed opinions on players, and therefore I'm take locked into whatever I said might happen, and instead of just, okay, this is where the research lies. This is what lets me know what I know, and then I'm going to try and make the most informed decision that I can make. That's kind of how I play this game, and I try to have a short memory. If somebody fails for me a week before, but now they're in a really great spot again, I'm probably still going to be recommending and playing that player, because anything can happen from one week to the next, and getting take lock and saying, I'm never going to play this guy again because he had a terrible week and I rostered him, I'm never rostering him again. It's probably a really great way for you to be a long-term loser in daily fantasy. So make sure that you develop that short memory, and we're going to get to this slate if you would be so kind. Before lineups lock on Sunday morning, I will be live for 45 minutes on twitch.tv/Al_smizzle, taking questions from subs just like we do every week. It's our most popular show of the week, with 1,000 to 1,500 concurrent viewers on Twitch for the last 45 minutes before kickoff. And I would appreciate it if you guys showed up for that. If you haven't already, it's a great time. It's a good show and a great way for you to ask me questions with the most actionable information on the table. But for now, drop a like on this video. Let's see if we can get 1,000 by the time kickoff gets here. Subscribe to the channel and make sure that you ring that notifications bell so that you get notified anytime I publish new content right here on YouTube. So let's get to the chat. Let's ask them some questions to see what they have to ask. Who wants some of Debo? I would assume everybody. He's 4K. Kittle is probably not expected to play this weekend. Obviously, we'll know more by the time kickoff gets here. He showed that he can do that in the absence of Sanders when he left that game, and the absence of Kittle. He had 11 targets last week. Debo Samuel is a fine play. Listen. DFS Donuts, thank you for gifting a sub to TGT Stash. Thank you very much. Appreciate that. Coleman in cash with no Breida. Yeah, I think that he's way more viable. Nobody's talking about Kyler and Kirk, and I think that's a mistake. Okay, see, we've had this question before, Berto. I'm not aiming this at you, but like, I never liked the whole philosophy of nobody is talking about, right? Like, somebody read Best Buys this week, and the first thing did was, you didn't write up this guy in Best Buys. I have a word cap in Best Buys. I can only write 2,000 words. If I write more, they delete them. So I can't talk about every player on the slate. So I try to focus on the plays that I believe are the best plays. And I've said numerous times over the years that if you want to be contrarian, right? If you want to be contrarian in tournaments, the easiest way to be contrarian is go through and just take off the top 3 value plays at running back, take off the top 3 value plays from a points per dollar perspective, whatever. The guys that you think are going to be the highest owned. Even just use percentage owned projections if that's what you're going to do. Scratch off the top 3, right? You're still going to get great players in great situations with great volume. You're just not going to get the A++ ones. And it's not about one player's percentage. It's about the combined percentage owned for your lineup. You can win tournaments having a chalky lineup or having some chalky plays. You just need that 1 or 2 guys that are less owned, and they don't have to be 0.2 or 0.3% owned. If they're like 3 to 10% owned, like Derrick Henry last week, you can put yourself in a great position to win tournaments. So like the never talked about type of guys, it's like Kirk is somebody who gets a lot of volume. We spoke about him last week and all the volume that he gets repeatedly. He hasn't had a less than 5 target game this season. And I think that people are going to pivot off of him. Some people are going to get onto him because he scored 3 touchdowns last week, right? The people that play whack-a-mole, right? And just, he had 3 touchdowns, must play him next week. And then there's going to be people that go the other way. He had 3 touchdowns last week. It's unlikely he's going to have another multiple touchdown game back to back. So they're going to get off. But if you think that this is a good spot for him, by all means. I personally don't think this is a great spot because of the matchup. So I can't really just talk about guys in really bad matchups. Ross Dwelly. I don't like that his price is where it's at. I think he's in play. But I think he's less in play than if he was like 2,900. But after, they knew that Kittle was out or going to be out for Monday night, and they messed up the pricing on that slate for him. They corrected that before pricing came out for this slate. Steve Boynton, thank you for the 100 bits. Thoughts on Calvin Ridley? You love Calvin Ridley in 2019 is your Aaron Jones from 2018. FD refuses to move his price, and against guys like Sanu, Hollywood. But yeah, I like him, but I think he's somebody I probably like more for tournaments because he tiers below other guys that I think I'm prioritizing more in head-to-head games. Is that right? So like, I hate the cop out of, yeah, he's a tournament play. Because I'm not like, everybody can have a 2 touchdown game, but like, I'm not the type of guy who's going to say, oh, this guy, yeah, he's good in tournaments. He's good in tournaments because he gets targeted a lot in the red zone and has the trust of his quarterback who has to throw it a lot and throws for a ton of 300 plus yard games, and is against a team that looks like one of the games that could shoot out this week. And if they do have 3 touchdowns through the air, it is not unlikely that Ridley could have 1 or 2 of them, especially with the missing and vacated targets from Freeman, Sanu, and Hooper. So no, I don't hate him. I'm just prioritizing other guys higher in cash, I think. No Lattimore, New Orleans, Mike Evans week. Yep. Agree with that. Thoughts on Jaden Graham of Atlanta? Looks like he might see more targets than Lockert. What? Graham is expected to garner an increased role of the offense during Sunday's game against the Panthers, with both Hooper and Stocker battling injuries. Okay, it's a dart throw. I think we need to figure out exactly how many snaps he's going to play. And I don't know that I can do that on the fly here on Friday afternoon. But you know that they utilize their tight end. Matt Ryan has targeted his tight end more than anybody else in the red zone on that team, and in the end zone, definitely more than anybody else in that team. And if he's going to step into the Hooper role, and I'm not saying that he is as talented as Hooper, but here's what we can do. Because I honestly don't have an idea about this kid's scores. He's fine, right? Normal athlete at the position. He's fine. Best comp, Tyler Higbee. Fine. Got red zone size. Fine. If you think he's going to run, and we do that route thing every single week, right? In Discord, where I give you guys the sheet of routes per dropbacks. If you think that he's going to take over 70% of Hooper's red zone targets, then yeah, he's fine at 2,800. If you want him for a dart throw, I'm fine with that. Goddard is a solid, cheap tight end option. His role steadily increased prior to the bye week. I don't hate it. He's no Red Ellison. Same situation, though. Same situation, just, different guy. Is Carr worth his price? Quarterback is always very smushed. I don't know. I can't think of a better word for, for the way that DraftKings prices quarterbacks than smushed, right? It's just kind of the way that it is, right? Like everybody is just jammed between 6,900 and 6,000, right? Everybody's jammed in here except like Lamar Jackson, who's great. So like, what path to 25 plus points does Derek Carr have? Right? Would be the question that I would ask for tournaments. And I'll be honest with you. There's a lot of possibilities and a lot of paths where he does not get to 25. And probably more than the paths that he does top 25. It always seems like there's someone better for just 200 more. You mean every quarterback or just in terms of car? Right? Like, I'd probably prefer Matt Ryan at 62. If Stafford plays, Stafford at 6,000. Kirk Cousins against Denver. Tom Brady, 6,400. More paths to mid-20s. Stafford's out now? Okay. That came out this morning. Because last I heard was he's doubtful. So if that just came out before we went live, then fine. Joe Mixon thoughts for this week. I have not. Joe Mixon is probably somebody that I play less than any other high volume running back for the last 2 years. And I know that seems to go against everything that I say to do. You know, just play the high volume guy. I just think that they don't score that many points. He does not have very many paths to touchdowns. Gio could be back this week, means less work in the passing game theoretically for him. Seems I'm higher than most on Zeke this week. Zeke versus Cook. I don't want to ignore Zeke. I think that him and Cook is a coin flip, to be honest with you. And I think that you can play both of them in cash. So, like, we talked about this before we went on air, right? I think that there are 3 running backs that everybody's going to roster at least one of. Christian McCaffrey is one of them. I'm talking about a cash game lineup first. Because for me, everything starts with the cash game build because that tells me how to play tournaments. And a lot of people have asked, what is a cash game lineup and what is a tournament lineup? A cash game lineup has higher floor. You're looking to stuff targets. You're not looking to take chances on players. You're not looking to say, well, this guy could have 2 touchdowns on 4 targets. Those are not cash game plays. Those are tournament only plays. They're dart throws. You want to lock in as much volume as possible for each dollar, points per dollar, trying to get the highest floor you can with possibility of a ceiling is what a cash game lineup is. A tournament, you also want ceiling plays, guys that have access to 2 touchdowns, but you're willing to take more chances than you are at lower floor plays on the chance that they pay off and you come up on top, because I don't care about ownership in cash games. I do care about ownership in tournaments. Christian McCaffrey is one of those guys. Ezekiel Elliott against the easiest team to run against or easiest team to score against for opposing running backs on the season. More DraftKings points allowed for the Detroit Lions against running backs than any other team in the league. And he played against the team last week, because I'm sure people are going to say, well, he didn't do anything against Minnesota. Minnesota has allowed the 5th least points this year to opposing running backs. So a totally different matchup situation, but the volume's been great, and Ezekiel Elliott's going to get a ton of looks. Dalvin Cook also in an extremely high volume spot, home favored, getting 25 plus touches every single week. Absolutely love Dalvin Cook. One of the league leaders, if not the league leader in terms of carries inside the 5 and red zone carries for running backs. So he gets a ton of looks. So I think every lineup is going to have one of these 3 guys in cash. Some lineups will have 2 of them, but every lineup will have at least one of them. The second running back that everybody's going to go after is going to be Josh Jacobs, because of the matchup with Cincinnati at home, favored, horrible team that can't stop running backs, and a team that can't do anything or does not like to do anything more than feed the ball to their running back. This is basically how they run their offense. I am intrigued by the fact that they have utilized him more in the passing game as the season has gone on. As you can see here, he was getting 1, 0, then 2s, then the 3s started coming, and the last game he got 5 targets. I like the way that they're actually utilizing Josh Jacobs now. Is he going to get 7, 8, 9 targets a game? No, but at least we have a little bit better floor with Josh Jacobs, and he's priced up to 6,900, which is highest price of the year for him so far. But against one of the best matchups he's going to face, and he's still too cheap based on the volume, the workload, home favored matchup, everything. He's going to be extremely popular. And then the last guy that people are going to have at running back, like I said, I think there's 5 running backs. They're going to be rostered in different ownership levels. Is Brian Hill for the Falcons. If Devontae Freeman's out and does not look like he's going to be able to play, And we saw him get 21 touches in Freeman's absence when he left the last game. So the volume and the value is just too good to ignore. And there's other values as well. There's guys like McKissick. There's guys like who's a possibility. There's guys like Balaj, who's a possibility. But in my opinion, I believe that Brian Hill in that tier of players is the highest one, or the best graded one for me. So those three groups, one of the tier one, one or two of the tier one, possibly one of Josh Jacobs, and one of Brian Hill or another value is going to be the way that goes. So Matt wants to know, is there any way you can try to play all three? I don't know if you can fit all three. I know that you can fit 2 and Jacobs. You know, it's like if you plug in these 3 cats right here, you have 3,600 remaining. You'd have to have like the cheapest defense or one of them. You'd have to have a super cheap quarterback, right? You'd have to have like Driscoll at quarterback, and then you can find enough value to get there. But I don't think that it's like a great route to go. Considering that you could sacrifice one of these guys and go to like Jacobs or Hill if you wanted to stuff 2 of the top 3. Freeman just ruled out, good. So Hill's in there. That gives you way more money to play with. You can afford a little bit more high volume wide receiver in there, and not have to completely punt tight end. So it still gives you a path to like, you're looking at like 75 or 80 touches between the 3 running backs if you stuff 2 of the high dollar ones and then one of the mid price. But I know people are going to want to try and jam wide receivers in there too. So Miles Sanders, if Howard's out, yeah, I'm okay with that. Jacobs priced up on FD, 800 more than Fournette, only 400 less than Zeke and Cook. Yeah, it's a different story. So, like, let's talk about wide receivers real quick. Would I go Dwelly or Olsen at tight end and GPP? Whichever one you think is going to be lower owned and has more path to touchdowns. If they have equal touchdown equity, I'd play the lower owned one. And I think Dwelly will be much lower owned than Olsen. So let's go to wide receivers real quick. Carlos Hyde is popping for some people. So in other words, you've looked at a projection set and Carlos Hyde is showing up as a good value. I don't really play him all that much. I played him when he was on San Francisco and getting like 6 or 8 targets a week. He's just not that guy right now. So cheap wide receivers, I think, is where everybody's going to go this week. And let's look at guys under 6K, because there's a lot of them. So like DJ Moore at 5,900, I think is an outstanding play. He has not cashed in terms of touchdowns for the amount of volume that he has gotten recently. And that may change against Atlanta, who has really, really struggled against opposing wide receivers. That can also be said for Jamison Crowder, who has cashed in on touchdowns more recently with the volume that he's gotten. Similar target ADOT to somebody like DJ Moore, but DJ Moore has actually gotten a lot of shots down the field, 3 a game the last 4 weeks, which is more than anybody else in the NFL. Nobody else has had that consistent work down the field, 3 deep shots per game for 4 straight weeks. So DJ Moore with a little bit of a higher ceiling for me than Jamison Crowder. Jamison Crowder, more of a floor candidate. There's somebody brought up Christian Kirk before. This is just a really tough matchup. At San Francisco by themselves, anywhere is a tough matchup. San Francisco at home in the second time seeing a team, very, very tough matchup for me. Terry McLaurin against the Jets, who just have no way to stop anybody from getting downfield. If you believe that he can get behind this defense, one of the fastest players in the league, playing against some of the slowest set of cornerbacks in the league, and he's come down from 6,200. He's been over 6K for a month. He's now at 5,600. We've seen him break 2 slates pretty much. Week 1 against Philly and week 6 against Miami. Both bad sets of cornerbacks, both positive matchups for him. And then against Minnesota, tough cornerbacks. Against Buffalo, tough cornerbacks. Against San Francisco, tough cornerbacks. Now he gets a soft landing spot again. So a good bounce back spot for Terry McLaurin here. And I think he's going to be much lower owned than some of the other guys in this price range. We talked about Ridley already. The consistent volume that he's getting, kind of a touchdown dependent guy, but we've seen him go on touchdown spurts before over multiple weeks and within one game. He just has had explosion weeks in the past, and with the vacated targets and red zone usage that has disappeared from this Falcons team the last 3 weeks with Sanu and Hooper and Freeman. He's on the board, so it's just a ton of value right now. So Terrell Williams also, you guys know my brand is basically based around Terrell Williams because of the Gazelle gift that I've posted for years every time he scored a touchdown. Love the way this guy plays. Love how he gets down the field, but he's just not playing for an offense that feeds him the ball or challenges downfield as much as I would like them to. But Cincinnati is bad enough on defense that I think he makes a good tournament play this week. Curtis Samuel is a great pivot off of DJ Moore. If you want to save that 600, or you have to save that 600, his volume has been good, though less than Moore. But when they get into the red zone, he is number 2 on this team in terms of red zone looks. So you get a lot of payoff, a lot of touchdown equity with Curtis Samuel that you don't get with, or that we haven't gotten with DJ Moore. Mo Sanu is going to be somebody that's extremely popular this week because of the matchup with Philadelphia. Uncle Mo, he looks like he's 50. And he's not. But God, he looks like your uncle. Just looks like an uncle that shows up at the cookout, right? That you don't see for a while, but then he just kind of shows up. Who's that? That's Uncle Mo. 5,100 for Uncle Mo this week. Beasley probably going to score a touchdown because that's a joke, YouTube. Beasley's probably going to score a touchdown because Adam Levitan called him the king of dust a few weeks ago, and he caught touchdowns for 3 straight weeks. I'm not on Beasley, but he'll probably score a touchdown. Then we get to Devontae Parker in a really tough matchup, but his volume's been really good. Westbrook and Conley with Foles coming back. Auden Tate if you want because of the good matchup, but I'm probably not going to go that route. But his volume's been good, and he plays against Oakland, who's not been good against wide receivers, but he's not that thrilling of a play. Debo Samuel, who I think is one of the best value plays on the slate, for the volume and the price. He has not been corrected with the vacated targets for somebody like Kittle, the vacated targets for somebody like Manny Sanders, and this young player kind of coming into his own. So if you drafted him in season long, you're finally reaping the benefits if you hung on to him this long. And then we have Russell Gage. 14 targets the past 2 weeks, only 3,300 this week, not priced up. Does have a good matchup against Carolina. Or a good enough matchup, and a lot of scoring expected with a lot of vacated targets here to be soaked up by some people. Julio can't get a 60% target share, so if Russ Gage pulls in 18 to 21% of the targets this week, he's going to perform. He's going to perform well for 3,300. You don't need all that much. If you get 4 catches for 55 yards or 5 catches for 45 yards, you're fine for your head-to-head game. So there's a ton of value at wide receiver. There's a lot of ways and a lot of paths for you to get to those high-dollar running backs. Ebron or Howard for value tight end? I prefer Ebron. I spoke about why on the 06010 podcast, the fantasy focus pod on ESPN. And if you're in our Discord, go look at I think I pinned it if I didn't, one of the mods can. How many routes Ebron ran last week in a game with Doyle there. With Hilton out, his role has changed. And he has not been priced up for that role change yet. James White week? I mean, it's James White week every week. No, I don't think it's about squeaky wheel. I think it's about they have nobody else to throw to. There's only so many targets that you can give to guys like Pascal. And like the most talented pass catcher they have currently on this roster is Eric Ebron. And they needed to find ways for him to run routes and be a target. But they had him previously behind, when they run one tight end sets, he's well behind Doyle. Thoughts on Sanu's role? 14 targets is an aberration. Yeah, I think he's not going to get 14 targets this week. I'll take under. But I think his target share should be fine. But 14 targets, I don't see happening again. Somebody brought up James White. Has there been a player that's been more consistent at running back than James White this year? Just been good every week. Right? One way or another, he finds his way to 13 to 15 fantasy points. CMC had a 7-point game. And CMC's been amazing. CMC against everybody not named the Tampa Bay Buccaneers has been ridiculous. 30 points plus every, like averaging like 36 points a game. Consistently mediocre. This matters. Price matters. This isn't a game where we just get to, it's not pick 'em, right? I can't just pick the highest price guy on the slate every single week. You know, it's like, who do you want to play? Well, I'm going to play Christian McCaffrey, Michael Thomas. I'm going to play Dalvin Cook. I'm going to play Ezekiel Elliott. I'm going to play, Darren Waller and Lamar Jackson. Unlimited salary. Let's go. You know, we gotta fit guys into a salary cap here. And James White has not had a 20-point game this year. I'm not saying it's going to happen this week, but like at some point, that team's going to score 30 plus. James White wins a lot of milli makers. Sure does. And nobody ever rosters him. He's always low owned. James White is like vanilla ice cream. Not exciting, but it's still good enough. Exactly. Yep. Been tackled inside the 5 like 8 times. Right? He's just been that guy. Never know what Belichick will do week to week with running backs. I completely disagree. I've disagreed with that for 4 years. We know exactly what Belichick's going to do with his running backs pretty much every week. When you step back from it and don't get worried about the touchdown, like which guy scores a touchdown, none of them play over 40% of the snaps, right? White has a defined role and it's about 38% of the snaps, and he gets the pass game usage. And it's been easier to figure out this year than previous years. Exactly. You know, the LeGarrette Blount years, those were easy. 2015, 2016, those were very easy. Deion Lewis got the carries in the first half. He got the catches in the first half. Once they got up by 7 points in the second half, it was all LeGarrette Blount all the time. Anytime they got inside the 5, it was all LeGarrette Blount all the time. Never know what he's going to do with his wide receivers is the issue. It goes to Edelman. The rise of Burkhead is where people got shaky. Yeah, a little bit. Like, when you step back from it and disassociate yourself from the picks that you make or where you, like, you know, or things like that, it's like, okay, it kind of happened. Like, every once in a while, there's going to be like a Brandon Bolden touchdown, and people are like, oh, you never know what's going to happen with Belichick. Okay. When you look at the entire picture of how many snaps guys play, the roles that they play in, are they in on short yardage? Are they into the goal line? They have specific packages. It very much fits into that philosophy of do your job. Everybody has a specific job that they have to do, and when those opportunities present themselves, they're on the field, and when it's not that opportunity, they're not on the field. Somebody said that they asked a reporter asked Deion Lewis this last season after a game. They said, are you, like, do you not score, like, do you think that they need to have more confidence in you in short yardage plays? Do you wish that you would stay in the 5-yard line to score touchdowns? He said, that's not my job. It was a very simple answer. That's not my job. That tells you all you needed to know. That there are just certain guys on that team that do certain things. And James White's role for the last 3 years has been more defined than anybody else on that offense at running back. Will Pat Peterson shadow Debo? I have no idea. I use cornerback wide receiver matchups, except for the most extreme ones, as a tiebreaker for the most part. And Z Miski coming in with the Pat Pete hasn't been good. Also true. So you guys tell me. Are you playing Michael Thomas this week at 9,900? He's still a good value. What percent owned do you think Michael Thomas is going to be in the Millionaire Maker? Is the question that I have. GPPs, yes, probably not for cash. I agree with that. Want to, but can't. Trying to squeeze them in, 50%. $10 to 15% in tournaments. I don't think that that's unfair. And as I said, there's a lot of value wide receivers, right? We ran over everybody below 6K. There's a lot of plays under 6K. And what that's going to do is it's going to hold down ownership on all of those plays that are under 6K, which I think is a very, very good thing. Because if you want to say, okay, I'm going to hone in on 3, 4, or 5 of those, and I'm going to cycle those through all of my lineups, you have a chance to overweight the field by fading a couple of the other ones. You can't play everybody, and you shouldn't try to. Thoughts on Aguilar if Jeffrey's out? It's fine. It's just a tough matchup. Those DBs for New England are good. But this is one of the first times, as Adam said on the edge, where that defensive line doesn't have a massive advantage over the opposing offensive line. Philly's offensive line is very, very good. And if they can give time to Wentz, then maybe he can complete a bunch of passes this week. Have an elite GPP play this week? I need you to define what an elite GPP play is. Because I don't know. I'm being honest. I'm not being sarcastic. Because I think that he's going to be somebody who's going to rise in ownership from what we expect now until Sunday. Because of all the other players that are going to be out. Is Driscoll too thin for cash? I personally think so. I'd rather go with Kyle Allen if I'm going down to that price. Give me all the cheap chalk running backs and then Thomas Evans wide receivers. Look, we've talked in the past about, this is why I try to figure out where, well, I hope he doesn't rise in ownership. Fair. I think he's going to. As soon as we start getting, the public is too sharp now, right? The field has gotten way sharper over the last few years. It's a different game now, daily fantasy, than it was 2-3 years ago. And people understand that when other players are out, it's very easy to pivot to that one guy, even if they were never anywhere near that player before. So like Breida out, oh, Coleman. People are just gonna shift right over to Coleman. Partly because they're smart enough to do that, and partly because everybody's gonna say to do that. Evans over Godwin for cash, for me, yes. Equal floor, higher ceiling for Evans. And New Orleans provides an awful lot of pressure defensively. And when they provide a lot of pressure on Jameis Winston, when Jameis Winston is pressured, he throws the ball to Evans. More than anybody else, like 34% of the time. As opposed to 25% of the time when not pressured. How much can you expect from Gage this week? I mean, what are you looking for? If you're looking for like 30 fantasy points, don't play Gage. Right? If you're going to be mad, if you play Gage and he ends the day with like 12 fantasy points and you're the type of player that's going to say that Russell Gage was a bust, you guys said play him and he only had 11 fantasy points. What a bust. You guys suck. Don't play him. He's a wide receiver. There's a lot of variance inherent in that position because they don't see as many touches as running backs, right? So somebody like Russell Gage should probably get 6.5 targets, right? I think 6.5 is a good projection for the amount of targets that Russ Gage should get. He runs low A dot routes. They're very close to the line of scrimmage. He is not the guy that they send deep and fire to. That's Ridley and that's Julio. He runs the underneath stuff. He runs the Mo Sanu stuff. So he should have about an 80% catch rate. So if he ends this day with 4 or 5 catches for between 35 and 65 yards, that's about what I would like for him. Right? If he happens to find the end zone, and he has been their second highest, over the last 3 weeks, their second highest red zone targeted receiver, behind Hooper, who's now gone. There's a possibility he finds his way into the end zone. If he gets into the box, all of a sudden that 9 to 12 points, or that 8 to 12 points, turns into 14 to 19 points. Right? And he's an absolute smash play. And every wide receiver can fail. We've seen that, right? Every wide receiver, with the exception of a few, can have a day where, like, you pay for a 7K wide receiver and they have 4 catches for 40 yards. You're like, I got 8 points out of my 7K wide receiver. So when there's volume at a value at wide receiver and a path to snaps and a path to targets, I tend to take it. Wide receiver is a very easy to punt position, at least to me. When there's a volume of snaps and an expected volume of targets. More worried he puts up a donut? I don't think he puts up a donut. Why would all of a sudden, I mean, I don't know. He's on the field, he's running routes, and that was when Freeman and Hooper were there. Now they're gone. He's going to see targets. He's not going to see 15 targets, but he's going to see targets at 3,300. No problem, man. Somebody asked about Jared Cook. Jared Cook worth it at 4,400, or prefer to pay down for Ebron? I think Cook is in play. Anytime you get a chance to play tight ends against Tampa Bay, you should do it. You know, guys who are getting some sort of volume. If he gets 16 to 20% of the market share this week, of Drew Brees' targets, and I think Drew Brees is going to throw the ball more this week than they normally throw the ball. Opponents are throwing the ball 68+% of the time against Tampa Bay. So if he gets, you know, if Drew Brees throws it 40 times this week, right? If Drew Brees throws the ball 40 times, and he's thrown it 45 and 43 and 43 in 3 of the 4 games that he's played. So if he just throws it 40 times and he gets 20% of those targets, you're looking at 8 targets against a team that sucks at defending tight ends. And he's thrown it 45 times ish, 43 to 45 times in all the other games that he's played this year. And now facing a team where teams tend to throw it more. Road Breeze outdoors. I mean, he'd have to have a really, really bad game. A really, really, really bad game. No worries for Road Breeze after last week? Not really. I mean, everybody looks at... I mean, I don't have the stat handy. You know? It's going to take me a while to get it. But, like... yeah, he's better in the Superdome, but he's still a Hall of Famer on outdoor stats. You know, that's kind of the problem, is that people react to, oh, he has splits on his career, but you're trying too hard to be the red team. You know, you're just trying too hard to be the red team. Thoughts on Kamara this week? I think that his price came down, and I think it's weird because I don't know. They're some players get priced up, some players get priced down on DraftKings. A lot of them get priced up based on matchup, and I get that. I have to change this whole thing. Pass yards, pass attempts, pass completions, pass touchdowns, pass interceptions. Pass yards per attempt. There. And where is it? Let's go from 2013 to now. Okay. Here's Drew Brees. 50 games at home, 48 games on the road. He's amazing at home. 330 yards per game. Air yards per attempt is up. Pass touchdowns is up. Interceptions is slightly down. Completions here. This is still ridiculously good. 272 yards and 1.6 touchdowns per game on the road is still very, 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 very good. You know? So, like, this is otherworldly. This is still an all-pro. That's a lot of touchdowns on the road. A lot of touchdowns. Let's refine it to like 2016 to 2019. Pretty similar. 251, 1.56. That's when they became a more running team. Right? Still completing 24 passes. I'm not fading Breeze because he's on the road. Basically is what I'm saying. I'm sorry. I'm not fading Breeze's target guys. I don't think that Michael Thomas is all of a sudden going to suck because they're on the road. I don't think that Jared Cook is going to suck all of a sudden because they're on the road. And I don't think that Alvin Kamara is not going to be able to catch passes because they're on the road. Miami defense versus Allen, low over under. Okay, so you don't want, especially when a team is exploitable. Exactly, Caillou. Or Kalu. Yeah, hot take. Breeze is good. I mean, chat was just telling me that Breeze is bad. So. And so I should fade all of his pass catchers this week. I'm not doing that. Stream's good, Jace. So the question was Miami's defense against Allen. I'm always willing to play a defense against a quarterback that turns the ball over. Right? I don't tend to look at a team total. I don't really care about points scored against my defense. And I know that that runs contrary to the way that a lot of people think about a defense. Because the Kansas City Chiefs gave up a lot of points last year. But the Kansas City Chiefs were a very, 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 very good fantasy defense. Why? You know, somewhat rhetorically, but feel free to put it in the chat, of why they're a very good fantasy defense. Because the way that a defense scores points isn't by limiting the opponent. You know, the max points you can get by limiting your opponent to 0 is 10. That's not how you score fantasy points on defense. The way you score fantasy points on defense is by generating pressure, which results in sacks, fumbles, and interceptions. He's thrown 7 interceptions, 1 fumble, 2 fumbles, 3 fumbles, 1 fumble, 2 fumbles, 3 picks, 1 pick, 1 pick. Takes a lot of sacks too. So I don't really pay attention all that closely to the amount of points that I expect a team to give up when it comes to the defense. I care more about, does that offensive line allow pressure? Does that offensive line give up sacks? Does this quarterback take sacks? Does this quarterback turn the ball over? Because the Tampa Bay Buccaneers have scored a lot of points this year. 30, 34, 23, 26, 24, 55. Well, that week the defense against them sucked. 31, 20, 17. 2 interceptions, put the ball on the ground once. Didn't turn it over. 0 interceptions, lost a fumble. 2 interceptions, 2 lost fumbles. 5 interceptions, Jesus, 1 lost fumble. Right? Give me a quarterback that, I don't care if he puts up points. If he puts the ball on the ground, that's a chance for touchdowns. Opponent throws more against the Chiefs. Another great point. You want a quarterback who drops back a lot. So the Bears in Trubisky's rookie year, right? The Bears in Trubisky's rookie year dropped back like 14 times a game, right? Remember that? It was a couple years ago. They just did not throw ever. And it was like, well, they've only got a team total of 13. I'm going to play a defense against them. You have no opportunities for sacks, right? So like the team defense has a pretty good floor. Like they're probably going to end with like 6 or 8 points, but you have very little paths to having that 2 touchdown slate breaking 25 to 40 point fantasy day. So that's how I go about picking defenses. I need a defense that can get to an opposing quarterback. I need a quarterback that's going to drop back. I don't want to play a defense against a quarterback that drops back 15 to 20 times in a game. There's no paths to success almost for that defense. You'd have to have like a punt return and a kick return for a touchdown. I think the Pats defense, if you can afford them, is a great smash spot because the Eagles offense is awful. The Eagles offensive line is very good though. Samuels and Crowder or Hopkins and Gage for cash. I mean, it's very much in flux. It's still Friday. I try to save those sorts of questions for the Anti-Tinkercast because, like, I don't want to lock myself into a 1v1 and a 2v2 this early. I think both are viable. But we don't have all the information. Think of it like a poker table. You know, Monday we're under the gun and we do the first look. By Friday, we're kind of in middle position. Sunday morning on the Anti-Tinkercast, 45 minutes before lock, we're on the button. Right? It's more beneficial to make decisions when you have the most information possible. Because I don't want people to lock into this and say, well, you said that this side was going to be better on Friday. So, like, let's wait for the 1v1s and 2v2s until we have the maximum amount of information that we're going to have before the flop. Thoughts on Miles Sanders with Howard's questionable? If Howard's out, I think that Miles Sanders is better. If Howard's there, I'm not probably going to have a lot of Miles Sanders, if any at all. Thoughts on the spot for Fournette this week, disregarding price? I mean, he gets a ton of volume, so he's in play. You know, they're gonna give him the ball a lot. He's gonna catch the ball a lot, which is something that is new to his game this year. He's been one of the more consistent running backs on the season, and with the amount of red zone and inside the 5 usage that he's gotten, to only have 1 touchdown is mathematically somewhat improbable. So assuming that volume stays similar moving forward for weeks 11 through 17, Leonard Fournette should score more than 1 touchdown the rest of the way. We've seen this with multiple other players that we've talked about this season, where they're getting a tremendous amount of volume in the red zone and a tremendous amount of volume in the end zone. And that is the greatest predictor, if those things continue, if that volume continues, that they're not going to continue to be unlucky with touchdowns. And Fournette is one of those guys who should not continue to be this unlucky with touchdowns, with as much volume as he's getting overall. And inside, and then you've got somebody like Christian McCaffrey, who's been very lucky with touchdowns, scoring multiple over 50 yards this year. And that was where Fournette was a couple of years ago, where he was scoring all these long touchdowns but not getting any usage inside the 5-yard line. Guys that score touchdowns outside the 20 typically do not score a lot of touchdowns, because they're not getting that inside the 5 volume. In the case that Miles Sanders is the number 1 guy, do we go Hill or Miles? You still like Hill more? I think I'd have to think more on it. Right now, I probably still prefer Miles. I think that I still prefer Hill. I think Miles is a much better big play threat. You know, Hill is probably the cash game play. Miles becomes a very, very viable tournament play because of his big play ability. The guy's he's a speed freak. Gun to my head, Haskins or Finley as a QB2 option. Probably Finley. I'd probably go Finley in that case. Any love for Geis if AP sits? I mean, I want to like Geis. I really do. I just want him to be healthy. I want him to stay healthy. That's pretty much the long and the short of it with that kid. I think he's got a ton of talent. I just want him to put it together on the field. Guys, thank you for joining. I think that's all that the chat has for me today. I appreciate you guys tuning in once again. If you'd be so kind, drop a like on this video, subscribe to the channel, and ring that notifications bell. And be sure that you join us Sunday morning, 45 minutes before lock. The link to Twitch is right down below. Jump over there, give me a follow so that you'll get notified on Twitch as soon as I go live. I'm live 6 days a week. And the final 45 minutes before lock is the biggest show of the week. And I don't want you to miss that one either. So come join us and say hello. Until the next video, I'll catch you guys later. Bye.
He's a legend.